Need to get to the 46. Cousins. Pressure up the middle, comes near side, incomplete. He was looking for Treadwell, and they gave him a lot of cushion. And now the Vikings will punt.
Jonathan, how dare you? That is future Super Bowl champion Laquan Treadwell with the Atlanta
what's
Falcons.
up with these Treadwell drops? I don't understand.
Well, because
to start the show,
because the first segment was supposed to be your 5 mistakes that the Vikings should avoid in the draft. It didn't
petty.
ultimately become that because I took it another direction because draft nihilism needs to be accepted by everyone. Now we will get to the 5 mistakes the Vikings should avoid in the draft. So I'm going to just not make a mistake on my own and leave it to you. Go ahead. You've got a list. It's your choice, even if you want NFL music behind it, whatever you like. This is your 5 mistakes the Vikings should avoid.
I would like some music.
Okay. All right. Jonathan, pull that up for you.
Thanks. Okay. So I went through, as we mentioned at the top of the show, but then Matt derailed everything, so thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
History leading to my list and current circumstances leading to my list. But number 1, do not dawdle. And I looked up a synonym for dawdle. Dilly-dally is one of them, whether there's a hyphen in between it or one word. Shilly-shally is actually a word, and it means, I don't know. What does it mean? Let me look really quick. Shilly-shally, synonyms are hesitate, dawdle.
How about drag
vacillate,
your feet?
Waver, drag your feet. On time for no reason. When you know the pick, call it in. We know communication is not going to be what it typically is, and having a million people in one draft room when everybody's really excited during the first round or even on day 2 when people aren't exhausted yet, and then it becomes like a ghost town by round 5. But I think that when you know the pick, when it's in, go ahead and just get it done with. I think you don't want to leave this to chance and try to wait until, the final minute. Like, it's just, technology stresses me out to begin with. And when I think of all the things that could go wrong here and teams losing out on a draft pick because they didn't get it in on time because of connectivity issues, what have you, when you know, get it in right away.
I've got plod, procrastinate, saunter.
I like shilly-shally.
Shilly-shally is excellent. So thesaurus.com, if any of you are bored during your coronavirus quarantine. Yeah, I mean, this is a thing where teams will have to have, and I'm sure that they have worked to do this, but have the board ready and just be set to go when it comes along, because you never know what can go wrong here. And that's going to be one of the most fascinating storylines of the NFL draft is which GM can't figure out which buttons to push to join the Zoom conference call. Was it Jonathan yesterday? Did you say you had your money on Dave Gettleman, or maybe Rami did? But like, everyone's money is on Dave Gettleman for screwing this up for the New York Giants. But it's a good point that they should run through this a couple of times and have it ready to go, exactly all the situations that they might encounter. And I can't wait to see how trades go. Because
oh my God, I just feel like we're not going to.
Spielman.
I know, and I feel like we're not going to see as many this year just because of all of the logistical nightmares that creates. And I mean, even last year, I was looking something up about Drew Samia earlier this afternoon, and the picks that they traded to get him, and then there was another trade. I want to say either Cameron Smith or it might have been Armand Watts or something, where they traded the pick they just got, and then they just got like right before, and then they traded it back, or I don't know. They got one of their picks back last year, if I remember correctly, and it's like stuff like that's not going to happen this year.
Yeah.
It's too messy.
7 seventh rounders at least. Make it happen.
There's 3 right now, right? No, thank you. Okay.
Number 2.
When you see a run starting, do not think that you can beat it. And I pulled a quote from Jamal Stevenson, the director of college scouting for the Vikings, from 2 years ago when we were talking to him after the second round about Brian O'Neill. And the question was, did you feel a sense of urgency to pull the trigger on an offensive lineman with the big runs you saw on them earlier in the round? Quote, there was a big run, obviously. I've never seen that many offensive guards go this high in the draft. No, we just felt like with the value, he was up there on our board. We're never going to just draft a guy because of need. I understand that, but this is not a year where you're going to be able to have that same sort of communication. I mean, yes, there's going to be people connected via Microsoft Teams, whatever software these people have. But just in terms of the deliberation factor of, can we wait this out? Can we try to get somebody else if we move back? When you see the run going, learn from it and, buy in right away, because I will always go back to that from 2 years ago when we're all sitting there like, are you guys going to get a guard? Are you going to address the offensive line? And certainly O'Neal is a terrific player and, could be a franchise tackle for them. And he's developing into somebody who is really, really important. But,
So you got to you have to buy into draft nihilism with this one, because look at the guys who were drafted before Brian O'Neal. You wouldn't take any of them before Brian O'Neal. Austin Corbett, Will Hernandez, as much as we liked him, James Daniels, Connor Williams. No, that's all right. Never trade up in draft nihilism, because you should never panic, and you should assume that the odds of the guy who's taken 62nd versus the guy who's taken 50th are basically the same.
Sure. But I just think that when you see a run starting, just to think that you can outsmart it or beat it or get who you want later, I mean, you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah, I just say don't worry about it. Don't worry about the run it's starting, because your guy has the same odds as the other guy. Draft nihilism.
Okay, number 3, on the topic of trading back, don't get into this idea of what we've seen the past few years of trading back to try to avoid getting into a bidding war for UDFAs and college free agents. Those guys are going to take, that is a Spielman philosophy. Look at what's happened. They don't want to get into a bidding war with teams. Why do you think they took Austin Cutting in the 7th round with their final pick? Because they knew he was going to Denver and they didn't want to have to outbid for him.
And because you covered the team.
And obviously it's for me. But like, this is the group of draft of, players that are going to be part of this 2020 class that are going to take the biggest hit. So get your guys when they're available to you, because I just think that's a nightmare, because once that draft ends, when round 7 is over, everyone's going to work in the front office with every scout has a position group that they are responsible for in picking the college free agent class. And they sign 10 of them, and they've got about $100,000 budget. Don't get into a bidding war for college free agents when they're available to you to draft, when you have that many picks on day 3.
I think draft nihilism here would say it's not my money, so spend it on UDFAs if you want to. 7th round odds versus UDFAs, probably exactly the same or maybe worse, weirdly. Right? Would you say?
Probably.
7th round versus UDFA, it's probably worse in a weird way, because teams draft long snappers and kickers and stupid things like that. And then for whatever things.
Stupid things.
Yeah, I mean, Austin Cutting is a tremendous human being, and thanks for your service. But, like, come on. So I'm sure that they could have found another long snapper in this world and didn't have to spend a pick, but it probably doesn't matter when it comes to that. So spend the Wilf's money and get all your UDFAs that you possibly can. I get what you're saying. I'm just this is my new thing, is draft nihilism.
Okay, that's fine.
But it will be fascinating though. The UDFA market is, like everything else, incredibly random and ridiculous, and players that they pay no money or just invite to camp, like Adam Thielen or Chad Beebe, make the team all the time. Players that are UDFAs that they pay a bunch of money sometimes get arrested or sometimes become nothing and can't run routes when they get onto a training camp field. And then other times, it's just, one out of the entire class will end up working out. So I don't know if there's any science to it, and I think it will probably be the same. But I would still expect the Vikings to throw a bunch of cash at the UDFA market.
Well, that's kind of what I mean here. I mean, if we don't have OTAs, if we don't have rookie mini camp, and this goes straight to training camp, that presents a huge challenge for the UDFA class in figuring out who we are going to bring in. I mean, usually those are the type of guys who are, 51 or 52 or 53 on the roster.
Yep.
They never have a great chance of making it, but you always want to give them the biggest chance that you can, the most opportunity that you can to do it, because then you find an Adam Thielen, then you find a Chad Beebe, or, there's other examples of it too. I mean, you're missing that process here. And I think that you have to not act like you're going to get the same time with these guys and the same chance to evaluate them as NFL players.
That's a really good point.
So in that sense, don't stick by your same philosophy and I mean, it's been a smart philosophy in the past, not having to outbid for these guys. I mean, think about how much they paid for Holton Hill 2 years ago and how much they guaranteed him He's the highest paid UDFA that year. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
It's a good point though, because rookie minicamp is usually an opportunity. Somebody ends up making the team off of a rookie minicamp tryout every year, and now that's just not going to happen.
No,
so
and
it
that's
is a tougher
the problem.
situation.
So maybe you do end up using one of your 7th round picks on somebody that you think, well, maybe I can get him as a UDFA. I like this guy, but you are making a financial commitment, a stronger financial commitment to a 7th rounder than somebody that you would be bringing in as an undrafted free agent or a college tryout guy. But nonetheless, I think that you are in position to be a little bit more lax on that rule.
Okay,
this year.
So you have 2 left, right, on your list?
Number 4, have a contingency plan, i.e. magnets, for when technology inevitably fails. We know how much the Vikings spent, or at least we think we do, on that beautiful draft board that's inside their war room that stretches the entire wall. It's digital. I know that they're going to be able to have a smaller version of it on screens that everybody's going to be able to see, and the movement and what have you. Something is going to happen to one of these teams, if not more. I know that one of the concerns, I think it was John Harbaugh, said it today, that they're worried about the stuff getting hacked because it's all going to be digital. I mean, that is a valid concern.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not, those hackers are smart. I don't know how that stuff works, but I mean, they've clearly done it. I could get political on you, but I'm not going to. They've hacked very important things before. So have a contingency plan, because technology is going to fail you at some point. And, for Spielman, since he's going to be by himself in the house, he'll obviously have a technology person there. I think that's the one, loophole here, that the general managers are allowed to have, an IT guy with them just to make sure this thing runs smoothly. But somewhere you need to have those magnets out, because if you need to see your board in real time and it all of a sudden goes out, you don't want to be SOL in that circumstance. And I can just picture this. I'm not laughing at people's demise, but this is just so absurd. It's hard not to laugh.
I think it's funny because these people take themselves so hilariously seriously with this stuff. And I know their jobs and careers are on the line, but it's just, we saw the draft board and what it looks like when we took a tour of TCO Performance Center. And they have everything down to, you could pull up video of how the guy's hips look at the combine running the 20-yard shuttle. Like, really? Is this really a thing that helps you? And so, it will be interesting to see if one team has some troubles. And I can't help but think, if there is one squad that will be hacking away, it's going to be the New England Patriots, and somehow they're getting Tua. I'm calling it right now that somehow they hack draft boards and people miss draft picks and they get up and they draft Tua, and we all go, what? How did that happen? And then there's just a wry smile from Bill Belichick inside of his home with his, quote, IT guy / super hacker.
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
I don't look forward to the teams that end up getting, putting themselves in a pickle because of the technology issues. That's going to be, how are TV networks even, for them too, they've got to figure out how they can do all of this technology stuff to make sure that the broadcast goes off without a hitch. But I think we also need to plan that it's not going to go off without a hitch. Like, something is going to happen.
Isn't there a part of you, though, that's rooting for it? Like, a calamity here would be kind of funny.
I don't want people to lose their jobs over something like that or get in trouble. At this point, I don't have any expectations for anything at the moment in life in general. So, I anticipate something happening. To what degree, I do not know. But this could be a real big dumpster fire very quickly if one thing goes wrong. And that there are people who are rooting for it to happen, and people who are going to actively try to, screw it up. And I don't look forward to that at all. I hope that they can come up with enough of a secure function with their systems and all that to make sure that nobody can hack into it.
What I wouldn't mind seeing...
Some dumb fan's going to end up doing that.
Yeah,
and then
probably.
They'd have to be pretty smart. They wouldn't be dumb. They'd be jerks.
What I'd love to see, though, is somebody's dog come into the room and start barking while they're on
sure.
TV.
I'd love
like that.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny. That's not disastrous. That's funny.
Somebody's internet to go down because there's a windstorm or something. Like, the Ravens are in trouble. It's too windy in Baltimore, and John Harbaugh can't draft. Anyway. What is number 5 on
Number
yours?
5 pertains specifically to the Minnesota Vikings, and it really could for other teams, but just given how many draft picks they have, how many spots they need to fill immediately, because all signs are pointing to them filling holes at cornerback, offensive tackle, wide receiver, defensive end, interior, and the defensive line. That's 5 positions right there. Those are all going to be done via the draft. And if you still are in win now mode, do not have a knee-jerk reaction to all of that. I know that's easier said than done, but the second you do that and get nervous and make nervous decisions, you're overdrafting, you're missing out on picks, you're making silly decisions that you will eventually regret. And for someone like Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer, both of whom, to our knowledge right now, do not have contract extensions, their backs are against the wall in this draft. This draft could be their jobs.
Yeah.
And it could be, the end of their time in Minnesota if it doesn't go right, if they don't get, they need to hit on their picks. And yeah, we say that every year, but it is no more pertinent this year than it's ever been. I mean, I look at this draft class and I look at all the needs that they have and they weren't able to address in free agency. Right now, they are in a very tough spot, and I think that just amps up the pressure and amps up, the importance of hitting on these picks. But you got to stay the course somehow. And I know that kind of in a way contradicts a little bit of what I said with number 2. When you see a run starting, don't think you can beat it or outrun it. I think it all plays into here, like not making nervous decisions based on thinking, I guess, a little bit too far ahead. The NFL is very much a win today, worry about the rest later league. And we've seen teams draft with the opposite approach, like the Vikings did 2 years ago.
Well, I mean, last year they did.
Last year too. I just keep thinking back to 2018 for a number of reasons.
I still think that Garrett Bradbury could be a good player in the NFL. But if we go back and look at last year, to your point about stay the course and draft who you think is going to become the best player, not who can just plug a hole. Of course, you want to get needs that you have. You don't have any corners, but you're going to need those for 2021. It's the second or third most valuable position on the football field. Same with tackle. If we go back to last year, they were desperate to get someone who would fit in Kubiak's system, who was a good zone run blocker and so forth. And then after him, Noah Fant gets taken, which of course they take Irv Smith later, but you could have taken Noah Fant at that point. You could have taken Andre Dillard at that point, and I still think he has a good chance to become a good tackle. Marquise Brown, a wide receiver. If you knew that there were issues when it came to Stephon Diggs, that's a guy that you certainly could have moved on from. You didn't plan for Everson Griffin leaving with Montez Sweat, who was the 26th overall draft pick. And DeAndre Baker, the outside corner for the New York Giants, he goes 30th. I mean, my point is just that if you had looked toward this year, and even remember Jawan Taylor dropped, and he turned out to be a decent tackle in his first year for Jacksonville.
And he dropped because there were some health concerns.
Yes.
I think about his knee, and I don't remember that being an issue for him in Jacksonville.
No, he played very well, and it might get him down the road. I don't know, but there were all these other players that we knew about. This isn't just second guess. Oh, why didn't you take this guy? He became great. None of these guys have become superstars yet. But if you're just judging the process in hindsight, their process was, let's get a guy to fill a position right now. But they drafted possibly the least valuable position on the football field with the 18th overall pick and passed up on a dynamic tight end, a starting left tackle or two, and a wide receiver and a defensive end who can all play. And I don't know, DeAndre Baker did not have a good first year, but might develop into a good player. And I would advise draft for 2021. And if it works out in 2020, that's great. But you shouldn't count on it. You should count on what's going to happen in the future. I think we all believe that players like Fant and Dillard and Brown and Sweat can all be very good in the NFL. Sweat had 7 sacks last year for Washington. They got no attention for their defense, but they had some good talent there. If they draft him last year, maybe we all go, oh, you should have drafted an offensive lineman. What's wrong with you? But then now, a year later, we'd be looking at it and going, oh, well, good. You've got the answer to Everson Griffin being gone, and one thing is filled. And with Bradbury, he didn't give you any better play at center last year than if you had signed a guy off the bottom of the barrel. I think he'll be good in the future, but that's just a position that you can often fill with a free agent to get average or slightly below average play out of, and to draft him at 18, in hindsight, looks like a pretty big overdraft.